Hey guys, this is Marc Goldberg from Marc Vlogs Watches. This is a lavalier microphone windscreen. It is not a dead hamster. Look, today we are going to compare two of the giant names in horology. Rolex versus Omega. The Submariner date versus the Seamaster 342mm SMP. Both brands have been worn by none other than Bond, James Bond. In the meantime, before we do the quick fist watch check, I'd like you to know that I am Goldberg, Marc Goldberg, co-author of Let Dogs Be Dogs, a book available at bookstores near you. Buy it for the dog lover in your life, and please support the channel by subscribing, commenting, leaving me a like for the effort, etc. So thank you very, very much for coming on this journey with me. And right now, with no further ado, quick fist watch check. And today, I'm wearing the Tudor Black Bay Burgundy. This is the older ETA version, and mine is running very fast. I think it's gaining something on the order of 15 seconds a day, so it's either time for a service or demagnetization. But before we go any further with this nonsense, let's talk about the two brands that we came here to discuss: Rolex versus Omega. Rolex versus Omega. Okay, fellas, let's get into the comparison. You know, what we're looking at here are two watches that present very, very differently on the table. They just have incredibly different looks, even though they are both of the same genre, which is the dive watch. But despite the fact that they look so different, they have several really key elements in common, which is what makes them, of course, dive watches. First, we have clearly legible and heavily loomed dials, so that these watches will be easy to read both above and below water. Critically, we have the unidirectional turning dive bezel. Oh, look, this one is not set at the 12 o'clock position. There we go. And the Omega features, let's zoom in for a quick look, features a turnable manual helium escape valve. And that is not found anywhere on the Submariner, not even on the flank, as it would be on a Sea Dweller or a deep sea Sea Dweller. Now, the aesthetic of these two watches couldn't be more different. But before we wrap up some of the differences, let's just point out the similarities in the clasp. Now, of course, the clasps are engineered differently, but they are engineered to do the same job. Opening up this Omega here, we will discover the push button, which you can see right under my thumb there, and get it in the light correctly. And if we just depress that button, I'll use my finger here for that, I can slide the clasp in and out, and then it grows in several ratcheted increments. So I can lock it into any one of these several positions. Super handy because, guys, you can make that adjustment with the Omega while wearing the watch. You do not actually have to remove it from the wrist in order to make micro adjustments. So that's super handy. Now, the Rolex has what they call the glide lock clasp. And I think what's more clever in one sense about the glide lock clasp is that the entire set of adjustments is contained. The clasp will never change its dimension from here to here. All the action that's going to happen expanding and contracting the bracelet is going to occur underneath this clasp. Whereas on the Omega, you can see right here that the Omega clasp, the clasp itself expands and contracts. There it is in its fully open position. Here it is in its fully closed position. So the aesthetic of it is going to change somewhat depending on how open or closed you have it. So I think the engineering, in one sense, aesthetically is a little more clever on the Rolex. However, you can adjust the Omega while on the wrist you cannot easily do that with the Rolex. You cannot make easy adjustments on the wrist. I find I have to remove it. Now, if you have one of these guys, and if you have some trick for making the adjustment on the wrist, let me know that in the comments. Under the Glide Lock clasp, you can see these little ratchets, and all we have to do is click down on this link here, and now we can slide it in or out as many ratchets as we want. Click it back up. The clasp has stayed exactly the same dimension, but the bracelet has just been made smaller. And you see we have movement from that is the smallest, that is the largest. You know, as a point of order, this screw started to back out on me. The only way I noticed was I thought my Glide Lock clasp was a little messed up. Notice there's very tight clearance between this link and the flank of the clasp. When you go to close it, it just clears. It makes a nice little satisfying snap, and I found that I was having a hard time closing it. So on further examination, I discovered that that puppy was coming out, so I just screwed it back down. And what I really need to do is to take it out, put in some Loctite, and then put it back down again. It would be a complete disaster if that screw had come out, and the watch could have literally fallen right off of my wrist, and had I been in water, it would have gone to the bottom of Davy Jones's locker. Now, I have always heard that screws can back out, but I've owned screw-secured bracelets for years, and I never had that happen. How about you? Have you ever had a screw back out on you? Let me know in the comments. Okay. So I would say that in terms of the, sorry, I'm fumbling because I'm talking to you guys. I would say in terms of the functionality of these two clasps, I'm going to give the slight edge to the Glide Lock, but boy, it's by a hair. Notice that it's a bit smaller, it's a bit more refined. This Omega clasp is wider, a little bit brawnier, and of course it starts to open up and increase size here. But of course the Omega has the advantage that you can make that change on the fly, which I think is really worth something. It's a little annoying to have to remove the watch. So I'm going to give advantage Rolex, but you know, just by a blonde little hair, if you will. Now, dimensionally, they are a little bit different. This is 42 millimeters, this is 40 millimeters. Let me go ahead and measure the thickness now for you, because that is a dimension I do not remember. These are plastic calipers sent to me by Marc Stapp, all the way from Belgium. So thank you for the plastic calipers. So we have 13.6 thickness here. And this is going to be a little bit thinner. No, well, I'm on the Glide Lock, that's why. 12.5. Okay, so 13.5 for all intents and purposes, 12.5. Slight advantage goes to Rolex if you happen to like your watches a little bit thinner. But the dimensions of this Omega case are really pleasing. Now, of course, that helium escape valve on the Omega is called the wart for a good reason. I can assure you that when you start wearing this watch with any regularity, you forget that it's there. But wouldn't it be nice if it wasn't? So, small edge to Rolex for not having an unsightly horn sticking out of the watch. So let's really quick talk about the dials. Those are super obvious. I'm going to polish up my Rolex dial here. I think I've got to give a slight advantage to the Omega. Boy, this thing, no matter how you turn it, this is a ceramic dial. I don't know what that is, enamel paint, I'm not sure. Tell me in the comments what it is, but I don't think it's ceramic. But this is a ceramic dial with laser cut waves. Both of them have applied and heavily loomed hour markers. But this dial, you notice as I move them around, it changes quite a bit in the light. I also think it has AR anti-reflective coating, whereas this doesn't. So the Omega dial it's a lot flashier, but this is a lot more classy and iconic. So This says investment banker on a weekend. This says I sell used cars, but they're probably high-end, like, you know, BMW and Mercedes. So I have to say, I like the 42 millimeter size. I like the flashiness and the interest that I get from the dial, but this is certainly the most classic and iconic look, and it's cleaner, guys. The bracelet is cleaner looking. It's more refined, the Oyster bracelet versus the Omega bracelet. This is a good bracelet. It's a very good bracelet, but the edge goes to the Oyster bracelet. I'm going to give the edge to the dial here on the Omega, just due to the interest factor. But I will tell you, I have a problem with those skeleton hands. These loomed hands are super easy to read at night, and you can see these skeleton hands are loomed. I just find it difficult to read at night because that little thin line of loom sort of disappears in the inky blackness. So for nighttime legibility, advantage Rolex. Rolex is going to have another advantage right now too. This bezel. It's very precise. It's very good. I'm going to put it up here near the microphone because I wanted you to hear that. Guys, zero backplay, ceramic insert, highly legible. Neither bezel is loomed. It's going to lock right into the correct position with no backplay. Easy to find the 12 o'clock position. These scalloped knurls, although they are pleasing to the eye, previous iterations of this watch, it was very hard to grip and turn that bezel. And so what they have done is they have lightened up the turning action significantly. So it's very easy to turn. And I think that makes it somewhat less satisfying than you would expect. So it's really hard to criticize this because it's precise, it's clicky, there's no backplay. This is a high quality bezel, okay? But it is just not as satisfying as this baby right here. Now here, I have those nice sharp cuts, no delicate scalloping here. This is a manly, sharp, grip it with any, water, ice. If you're diving on the Arctic, doesn't matter. You're going to be able to grip this. And I'll put this near the microphone. This just has some of the most satisfying turning action that I have ever found in a bezel anywhere, on any brand. It's better than brands that are even more expensive and maybe horologically more significant than Rolex. They do bezels better than anybody. That loom pip is gorgeous. It is nice and generously sized, and it has a sapphire cap right over the loom pip to protect it. This one is much smaller. And somehow that outline triangle isn't as attractive as that solid one. So advantage, good bezel on the Omega, but advantage Rolex. Now, everybody knows that Rolex does boring casebacks. So here's the boring caseback on this one. Nothing wrong with it, just not interesting. Huge, giant, magnificent advantage Omega for a display caseback with sapphire crystal. Kind of an accomplishment on a dive watch, if you will. You can see the beating heart here. This is a coaxial escapement. So its escapement is different and theoretically better, allowing for fewer service intervals and less wear and tear. You know, it's mesmerizing. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous when you're wearing this watch. Sometimes you take it off just to watch the heartbeat. Look at that. Fascinating. Both of them are rated to 300 meters. So, you know what, guys? I'm going to turn the camera around and talk to you now about who wins. Who wins this race? Which is the better watch? Okay, guys, I am back with the Rolex here and the Omega here, and boof, which one of these titans outranks the other, you know? If James Bond came to life right now, and of course, I don't care what you say, it would be Sean Connery, my friends. Yes. It would be Sean Connery. Who's your favorite Bond? If Sean Connery appeared, boom, right behind me, and I said, Sean, buddy, pick your favorite watch. Which one of these puppies would you rather have? I'm going to tell you what, I don't think there's much choice. I think Sean Connery is choosing the Omega.
What kind of idiot are you? This is Sean Connery, and of course, I choose Rolex.
Sir Roger Moore, dashing, debonair, a lady killer. Well, not really, but you know what I'm saying? Suave, sophisticated. I think he's choosing the Omega. How about me? Okay. Here's the thing. I'm choosing the Rolex.
Good decision, Goldberg. You finally got one right.
It's kind of by a hair. As you could tell from the review, I'm very fond of both of them, but I'm choosing the Rolex, and you may not agree with that. Tell me in the comments, but let me give you my reasoning. This is the icon. Although it has changed over the years, it has changed slowly, incrementally. They have updated, upgraded, and changed it at a snail's pace, like a snail with a broken leg pace. Whereas the Seamaster has come out with multiple iterations. They seem to change it every few years, and they grow it in size, they shrink it in size, they take away wavy, wavy dials. They add wavy dials back. They have left the cupcake there has remained, but it has changed shape. You never know, come Baselworld, what's going to happen to the Seamaster, and you know what's going to happen to the Rolex. Nothing. Nothing. Now, we have to bear in mind value proposition. This watch retails for $8,850 here in the United States, and that is if you can get one, because it's in super short supply. The Omega, you might have to wait. Look, some people walk into an AD and just get lucky and pluck one right off the shelf, but the average person is waiting. Well, how long did you have to wait for your Submariner date? I bet you 6 months is not unusual. And I bet you people are either buying this right out of the case, the Omega, or they are waiting, the authorized dealer is ordering it for them, and maybe it's taking 3 to 6 weeks to come in. This watch is offered only in a couple of varieties. In steel, it's this or the Hulk. Then, of course, you get into bimetal, two-tone, and then you also have gold. So it does have different dials and stuff when you start getting into the two-tone. But in steel, it's this or the green Hulk. Green bezel, green dial. This guy comes in a million iterations. It's got at least 4 dial colors that I know of, and you can get it with bracelet or with rubber strap. The Omega rubber is really nice, by the way. But I'm not a rubber guy. I'm a steel guy. I like bare steel on naked skin. That's me. You might like rubber. This guy here is available for something approximating half the cost, double the cost. If you buy this, will it hold its value? We don't really know. Prior versions of this watch have lost value, but in Omega's defense, one of the reasons for that is that they have consistently and radically upgraded the movement, the size, the look. So you can go 2 versions ago of this watch and pick them up for $2,300, $2,400, $2,500. If you go 2-3 versions back on the Rolex Submariner, you're not going to pay less than retail. You're not going to pay retail. You're going to pay more than retail. The Rolex Submariner goes up in value. The Omega, well, maybe this one will hold. Maybe it'll go down a little. I'm not sure, but I can tell you this. You can't go wrong with either one of these watches. Let me just put it out there. If Sean Connery comes back and he chooses the Rolex, well, I'm with him. But if Roger Moore comes back and chooses the Omega, I couldn't really blame him. They're both wonderful. It's nip tuck, but for me, I got to pick one. It's the Rolex. How about for you? I got the Rolex off of eBay. I paid $8,550 for it. I got a great deal. ExquisiteTimepieces.com. Nick Lucas, thank you very much for setting me up with this watch. I may have sounded like I was complaining about it, but you know what? I love it. And I had a good buying experience with Nick and Exquisite Timepieces. So look those guys up. Rolex, Omega. It's Rolex by a nose. This is Goldberg. Peace out.
Paint the sky.